Welcome back to Making Money Matter, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Kerry Stevenson, and I've asked Richard Carlton. He's the Managing Director of Maronan Metals. Their ASX code, I should say, is MMA. And they are up in the Cloncurry region in Queensland. Big inferred resources out there, but they've come out with a fantastic, cracking announcement today. But before we talk about that, Richard, welcome to Making Money Matter. Great to see you.
Thanks very much, Kerry, for having me.
Well, it's the first time we've had you on Making Money Matter. So before I get into it, this was a spin out of Red Metal, Maronan Metal. You listed, IPO'd in April 2022, so you get the new kid on the block. But if you could, for our beautiful audience out there, who you are, where you are, I've given them a bit of an idea, but give us a bit more of a background of who are Maronan Metals.
Okay, thanks, Kerry. Yeah, you're right. Red Metal, who've had the project 100% in their own right for more than 20 years, decided that, Red Metal, in fact, are like project generators.
Okay.
They are greenfields explorers, and they're doing a great job in all parts of Australia. When they find deposits, typically their business model is to find others that will partner with them. Most recently, Oz Minerals, now BHP, were some of the things they've got. And they weren't able to generate enough interest with Maronan. And the Red Metal board said, this looks like something that's seriously good. We're going to spin it out, give it its own legs, and have a project-specific focus of a management team to work on Maronan. We believe it's that good. They also wanted to keep 50% of it at the moment. Wow. So they are still 50% shareholders. And when it was spun out, with 20-cent shares, it ended up doubling on day one. Like, it vindicated their decision that it was worth, at that stage, a bigger market cap than what Red Metal was itself. So it vindicated the board's decision. There was some excitement about it. And I think since then, we've seen, look, the markets have been pretty tough in this last year, particularly for the juniors. Yep. But I don't know that it's a proud thing you can say is we've never sunk below the issue price, and there aren't too many that can say that. And that's a testament to our shareholders that have just stuck with us. It's been amazing. So that's who Red Metal is, and that's how come we exist. So it's a single project focus. We have one tenement. We have a very small team. There's a board of 3, and we have an exploration manager, Andrew Barker. It's been an excellent pickup, well-credentialed, highly credentialed, picked up from Evolution Mining. Most recently working at their Cowal operation in New South Wales. And Andrew has been an amazing acquisition to the team. Very fortunately for us, which is also very rare in this day and age, he's been prepared to move his family to Cloncurry.
Oh, God bless him.
To have someone there, that's such a major blessing to us, because everyone that does fly in, fly out these days would not quite have their finger on the pulse like Andrew can. So that's been great. The relationship with Red Metal is very strong, very close. Our technical director is Rob Rutherford, and he, of course, is managing director of Red Metal. So he brings with him all the history of the operation, how all the work that has gotten us to today was done, and is very much a key part of it going forward.
So he still wants his hand on the tiller. He's technical, so he knows this deposit very well. So he's still involved. And as you just said, they've still got a 50% ownership in the project. So it's not like they were getting rid of the project. He's just saying it needs a total focus.
That's correct. And they believe it had far more value than the market was giving it within Red Metal.
Okay. All right. So I'm talking to you in December of 2023. Hard to believe we're coming up to the end of the year, but here we are. So Merry Christmas, Richard. It's coming up fast. Oh, my goodness. Talk to us about where you are and what you've got, because I've spoken to you in the past. You presented at the Gold Conference. It's a big silver deposit, but I want people to understand what it looks like. So let's talk about what you've done. You listed in April 2022. But what have you done this year to get more shareholder value?
Okay. I might just start with the starting point because what we
Mm.
inherited from Red Metal was, as you said, sizable. It's an inferred resource. And I think for your listeners, that's really important to stress. And I know, from time to time when I've listened to you with your interviews, you say, this is not investment advice. Do your own
Yes.
research. So
Yeah.
I'll put that little plug in here now too. This is an inferred resource.
What do
Which
you mean? Sorry, Richard, what do you mean by an inferred resource? Some people won't understand that.
Okay, so that's the lowest level of a category of resource that you're able to make an announcement on to say that you've got something in the ground. Otherwise, they're just drill holes. So this one has typically got drill holes that are on an average 200 meters apart, 200 by 200, and that's on average. And in fact, it's anywhere between 100 and 400 in absolute terms.
Mm-hmm.
So you can well imagine that a lot can happen in the 200 meters in between. So if you're making some assumptions on what's in a hole 200 meters away, it's of lot very difficult to be able to promise with all the geological uncertainty in the middle. And so that's an inferred resource, low level of certainty.
Right.
However, what we've done, what's been exciting during this year is the drilling that we've done, so we've drilled 17,000 meters.
Mm-hmm.
We've started to build the confidence that that original geological model is sound, and we're starting to get some intersections. We're getting some repeated areas of good wide mineralization at good grades over good continuity. So with holes a lot closer together. And that, I'd say, has got all the hallmarks, it's early days, of an operation, a mine that can come into operation. We've got a long way to go to get there, to get that, but the signs are absolutely encouraging.
So going back to this year, 2023,
Yep.
you said you've done 17,000 meters worth of drilling.
Yeah.
How deep have you gone? And what is it showing you? Because from this announcement today, you're getting some pretty strong grades. I'm pretty sure if I go back and have a look at some of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Strong results from the eastern horizon in that starter zone.
Yeah, correct. So, and you'll see that's nearer the surface. Now, our original brief when at IPO was we were committing to a couple of deep holes that were looking for sort of major extension potential for the lead silver as well as the copper gold. We drilled both those. You asked the question, how deep have we drilled? We drilled a 1,500 meter deep hole. And that,
holy moly.
that's right. And at $500 a meter, that's a $750,000 hole. And you can't afford to drill too many of those from the surface. The great news from that hole is that we did find that the mineralization continued down at that depth. So it's about 1,200 meters below surface. The grades were similar to what were further up. There had been some hope that they may have been even better. That dream is still there. It's still alive because the mineralization continued. So that was the exciting bit of that. That deep hole gave us the opportunity to do some downhole electromagnetic survey. So that's where you put a device down the hole, you send out signals, and what you're looking for is a magnetic response, which was what we were looking for to detect a copper target. We got a very strong response, and we've subsequently drilled a hole into that area, and we've shown deeper than where Red Metal were that the mineralization is continuing. It hasn't yet turned into sort of full widths of fresh copper. There's still quite a bit of chalcocite, but there's a significant amount of copper that's there, and all of that will be subject to metallurgical testing just to see how big the resource is and what our recovery is likely to be. So potential to build the story. And then once we drilled those couple of holes, we then said, okay, if there's going to be something at depth, you're going to need to pay for getting down there. So we switched our focus nearer to the surface, and that's where these exciting results have been coming up. So we nominated a zone we're calling the starter zone. You'll see that referred to in announcements, but nominally we said, all right, a 500-metre long and 600-metre deep zone. We'll try and get a better handle on what's in this particular area, and that is where we've been getting these thick intersections of lead silver mineralization. But the best thing is we've been gradually chasing those closer and closer to the surface. And you'll see, while in today's announcement is part of that, which that confirms that we've got about 350 metres down plunge, like from the surface, of good, consistent, wide, high grades. The highest we got close to the surface was just 100 metres below surface, where we got an intersection that was pretty much the inferred resource grade of 6.5 lead and 106 silver, which was just exciting. You know,
Again,
it's hard to believe.
For those that don't know, when you say those numbers, can you compare it to, I mean, you've been around for a while, you're a mining engineer. Does that get you excited, Richard?
It certainly does. Look, the nearby Cannington mine is probably put up as it's been one of the world's best silver mines, and the grades that they were mining in the early days are well up in the hundreds of grams to the ton, maybe 800,000-900,000 grams to the ton. Exciting for us recently, the announcement before last, we reported the highest grade of silver encountered on the Maronan project, which was 871 grams to the ton. So that's
getting up
nearly
there.
30 ounces to the ton. That's phenomenal. So yeah, that's the stuff that gets us excited. That's for sure. Like, we're silver buffs. We know some of our key investors at the moment. The single major one is Crescat Capital, based in America. You might know of Quentin Hennick, who's the chairman of Novo Resources. He's certainly a fan, and I can recall his comment when we had this near surface great intersection. He said, well, damn me, they've got this thing, it's not at depth, it's right near the surface. So look, they're keen. They're very strong supporters, but that sort of mirrors our excitement, I suppose.
Sorry to interrupt you, but has that discovery of the silver lead close to surface, has that surprised you, Richard? Because just before we were talking about that 1,500-metre hole, expensive, but this is all close to surface. Has that surprised you?
Yes. To have those widths close to the surface, yes. Right. 22 metres wide. It's a very strong result for sure. And then so we've been, as I said, gradually bringing it closer and closer to surface. So we've got, I think the closest spacing between some of these holes is about 40 metres. But when you can get that sort of consistency with the widths and the grades, that's what excites us. But the thing about today's announcement is we've got one of those holes. I think if I just have a look at it here, I think it had 18 metres, 18.5 metres. Yep, 5% lead and 106 grams silver. But importantly, if you look at those other grades, so if you're not in the actual centre of this high grade and width chute, even on the peripherals of it, you've still got 3 or 4 metres of these really strong grades, and they are very mineable. So that's the exciting takeaway out of this announcement.
How big is this area that you're currently doing the drilling in? That's the first half of it. And are you going to do some targeting outside this existing resource? So I want to get, for our listeners out there, I want to give them a picture of where you're at.
Yeah, it's a relatively small tenement that we're on, and we do have one other EM anomaly that's several hundred metres away from the main deposit. just recently, as we closed our drilling program, we've done some soil sampling across the top of that just to determine is it worth drilling? And once we assess the results we get from that, we may or may not put a drill hole into it. But other than that, the main focus is on the Maronan deposit in its own right. You mentioned though, like how big is it? I mean, 30 million tons of silver lead. I don't know. Look, we would like people to do their own arithmetic on it. We can't talk about the prospect really because it is just an inferred resource.
Yep.
But many of the mines, the base metal mines, once they get started, they always find something else. And we would be confident if we can get this into operation. Once we do, and I said it's got all the hallmarks of being able to do exactly that.
Yeah, and it's as you rightly said, look, it's certainly not an investment. People can reach out and chat to you because I know that you're very open to talking to shareholders. But as you just said, 30 million tons of lead silver, I think it's 11 million tons of copper gold. We haven't really touched on the copper gold apart from you saying we put an EM down and we got a little bit of a ping around copper. Is there a strategy around the copper gold story? Because I don't think the market's looking at you as a copper gold story at all.
No, and look, we're probably not pushing it. I think it's a little bit deeper, and we would think in any sort of mining scenario, it's probably, a few years into the lead silver production before it became a meaningful component of it. But that being said, we have been getting some good intersections. We've got metallurgical work to do. Red Metal did metallurgy on the silver lead and got amazing results, and that was one of the catalysts to them spinning this out. It was very good recoveries, but it was only one of the mineralization types. So we need to do more on the silver lead, but it's a stunning story in its own right.
Yeah.
And the copper gold, there is more to do on that. In fact, we've some samples that only in this last week have arrived at the laboratory for test work. So that'll be sort of part of our news flow for into the new year as to how that goes, and will help us design the drill program for taking this further.
And speaking of 2024, because hey, it's coming up fast, Richard. It's frightening. Right. Give us some idea of what news flow shareholders and listeners can expect in 2024, because I think the resource and scoping study is coming out in the first half of next year.
Yeah, it is. And in parallel with that, we'll be doing an assessment of drilling priorities. That'll arise out of doing this, firming up the, where we do want to drill. And we'd be hopeful, I don't know when we could slate that in for, but we want to recommence drilling fairly soon. And of course, that so straight away means you've got a quick amount of news flow. But initially, it'll be wrapping up this current program, which we've just one more after today's announcement, one more drill hole that we're still waiting on the assays to be finalised. So that'll be an announcement not far away, and then the next will be with regard to our assessment of overall what have we got.
Well, you've got a lot, I think. But again, ladies and gentlemen, as I said right at the start, the ASX code is MMA, but they only listed in April 2022, and you've certainly been very focused. It's a polymetallic deposit. What challenges does that throw up, Richard, if any?
Oh, one of them is for people even getting their head around of what in fact we've got, and because when you've got silver, lead, and copper gold, because people sort of specialize in particular areas. So while it's an inexact calculation, I like to use sort of a metal equivalent for if you just looked at gold. If you were a gold buff and you were saying this, this sounds like it's something that might interest me. How big would it be compared to some of these gold deposits? So it's the equivalent. Again, remember, it's an inferred resource category of about a 4 million ounce gold deposit.
That's nice.
Wow, that's something. If you were to look at it just as silver, it's about a 350 million ounce deposit of silver.
Wow.
So that's that. Well, you would know from the gold, so the precious metals thing, the ratio between gold and silver is typically that sort of 80 to 90, whatever the
Yep.
factor is.
Yep.
If you were to look at it just as a copper play, it's about 1 million tons of copper.
Huh.
If you were just interested in the lead, it's about 4 million tons of lead. So they're the equivalents if you just, and that's just using arithmetic on the values. So it'd be about a 3.3 grams to the ton gold,
Gold.
about 270 grams to the ton silver, about 2.5% copper, or about 10% lead. If you're just in those one metals, just to aggregate it all. So the different viewers you may have knowledge in one of those metals. Hopefully that will help them. It's not something I typically like to do because it's not quite right, but I tell you what, it's close enough that I've heard some people go, now I get it. All right, it's about that size. So
Yeah.
they can begin to think about it and then they start to, okay, so if that was that, and you've got 30 million tons of it, all right. So they're the calculations we like to have people sort of do themselves. We can't talk about that because it's the inferred resource thing.
Yeah.
But
And so it's right at the start, ladies and gentlemen. Look, and you can't talk about so many different things. There's rules with the ASX where until it's more indicated rather than inferred, you can't really talk about it too much. But one thing I'm allowed to say is that your market cap at the moment is about 30 mil, which is certainly not the value of a 4 million ton gold deposit, just quietly. I mean, and again, not saying anything, ladies and gentlemen, other than it seems like they're in the right area, Cloncurry region up in Queensland there. It's the Northwest Minerals Province. So there's been a lot of, and as Richard said just before, one of the most successful silver mines is up there and has been going for how long, Richard?
it'd be 35 years, something
There
like
you go.
that.
And
I think, in fact, the discovery hole went into Maronan just before the Cannington one. And then they hit what Cannington was and suddenly, well, let's go and do that. The exciting thing at Cannington, I think it paid itself back multiple times per year for the first 5 years. It was so rich.
But they hit something at Maronan, then they got distracted. So watch this space, ladies and gentlemen. Richard, give us 3 reasons why we should sit up and take notice of Maronan Metals right now as we come into, give us the Christmas gifts as we come into the end of 2023.
All right. Well, for me, the first one, Kerry, is grade is king. And, we've been reliably hitting very high grades and near the surface. The second one is we're continually returning around 20-meter widths of this high-grade material, and that is very attractive from a mining proposition.
Okay.
And the final one is don't write off copper gold as being from being a substantial contributor to what we're doing.
Wow, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. And I agree. Grade is king. You don't need to move as much dirt. 30 mil market cap. ASX code is MMA. Richard hasn't been out shouting about this because he wanted to make sure that he had the results before. Go on to the Maronan Metals website. Check out today's release. Really exciting times. Results coming back for just one more drill hole before Christmas. And then they're right into it in 2024 with a resources and scoping study and a lot more drilling to come. But for now, Richard Carlton, thank you so much for joining me on Making Money Mailer.
Thanks very much for having me, Kerry. It's been great.